Okay, let's try this again. I have a mic on this time. I hope you can hear me better. It seemed like it was going to be good enough that last video, and then I promptly got a very lovely, why am I taking my glasses off? I need them. I promptly got a very nice comment from one of you. Thank you. I'm trying to remember, but your screen name's something I can't recall right away. Thank you for letting me know. I hope this one's better. I hope that this mic situation does it. This is really new to me, all this setup. I do teach online through Zoom for my yoga classes, but I have this like little Janet Jackson headset thing. I'm not used to having this clip on, and I'm not used to doing any of this, and I'm not like the most tech savvy person to begin with. So maybe this time I can make this video a little less rambly and a little bit closer. I'm trying to make my, oops, I'm clicking the microphone. I'm trying to make my videos a little bit closer to the under 10-minute mark, just for now while I'm getting to know you guys, so it doesn't feel like a monumental task to kick back and watch my videos. Okay, so I caught you guys up. If you've watched any of my last videos, especially the last couple, you know that I have a really sick friend, and I was taking care of her last week. I was one of the only people available to do that. So me and a nurse and one other friend were doing the job, and it was a lot, and I was stressed, and I was scared. And I've mentioned many times, and so I'm going to say some of this stuff just a little bit quicker in case you watch any of the past videos, that I don't want to tell her story. It's hers, and so I'm not going to share any details, but thank you to those of you who prayed for us. This video is what I'm calling one of my gentle chats, and I look forward to doing other videos and other styles, but right now I'm just trying to get comfortable with this whole idea of being on here, of showing my face, of watching my face, and offering some kind of coherent message in each one of these shares. So I started the last video not only by explaining what I've been doing and how I am spending these next few days catching up on my life. Oh my gosh, I got so behind, and I got behind right at a moment in my community where things are picking up, and my yoga classes are getting bigger right now, and I need to do a little bit more communicating about them, and I need to get some information out there because next weekend, not this coming one, but the week after that, I am teaching a workshop, and there's just all kinds of things coming up, and I need to get on top of everything so that I can help to calm my nervous system down because it's quite rattled for a number of reasons. I finished yoga. I finished it. I'm so glad. Oh my gosh, I dragged this out. I started reading this, if I'm not mistaken, in February, and much like my life, the story in here had a really significant arc for the duration of this telling. I'm not going to try to say this author's name because I don't speak French, and I said I was going to learn how to say it before I came on and did this video, but I didn't. I don't speak French. I speak Spanish, English, my first language, and I will massacre that name if I give it another attempt. So, really good book. And he initially wanted this to be a book about yoga, but he decided, no, he didn't decide. Okay, gather yourself, Holly. He wrote this book with the intention of it being about yoga and meditation because he is kind of a lifelong practitioner. But during a meditation retreat, which is how this book begins, a silent meditation retreat, he got called away from that retreat for an emergency, which is kind of an unusual thing. You need to have pretty big emergencies to get called out of those things. And from there, his life kind of spirals a bit. And I will say I got a little turned around as I was reading this book, figuring out when and where. But I think that was because I took so darn long to read it. And it, for me, it's a little bit dragged, but I think it's, I don't know, whatever. It did drag a little bit, but it really picks up. If I remember, it's like a few, it's broken down into books within the book. Let's look. It starts off with the enclosure, then it goes to 1,825 days, then it goes the story of my madness, the boys, continue not to die. So those are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different sections of the book. So for me, it really began to pick up, which is kind of ironic, and maybe, I don't know, the third section, the story of my madness. I think the story at that point got a lot more personal. and a lot more human. And it started to include more people that were passing through his life during what for him was a really big valley. And my life was like that this year. So maybe there's a correspondence there. Maybe I read this at exactly the pace I was supposed to. My life took a pretty significantly negative turn at the end of January, and I had to sit in some deep truths and face some very significant shadows. And I think he did the same thing, although his valley was deeper and darker than mine. And then as he pulls out of that valley, there's new people come into his life. And I feel like that's happening for me now. I'm starting to get out in my community in new ways. And I'm meeting people who maybe I knew before, but I wasn't particularly friendly or connected to them. And so I've started to develop some friendships and some new experiences. And I started playing pickleball with my husband. And so I'm meeting that whole crew now. So this is kind of a similar story in a much different way from, of course, a male perspective instead of my own. And maybe that's kind of part of what I've always tried to communicate about yoga, is that it's a through line that moves through your life regardless of what's going on. Now, this gentleman did get away from the practice of yoga and moved on to some other things. But, in the 13 years that I've been teaching yoga, I've gone through a number of peaks and valleys. I've gone through really hard times. I've gone through, weeks, certainly days where I didn't want to show up and teach. And the act of showing up to the mat really helped. And I do think that the perspective of being a teacher is different than being a student. I know that to be a fact, because now when I do yoga with somebody else and I'm led instead of doing the leading, it's a really different experience. But nonetheless, yoga is still yoga, whether taught or led. And it's pretty exciting to feel that now through line through my life and watch somebody else for whom yoga has been a significant experience, practice, and then how your life just veers off in new directions all the time. Teaching yoga has created a whole path that I don't think I would have ever expected was going to come to me, even, in the years just before I started teaching. I really wasn't planning for it. So anyway, I encourage you to read the blurb on this book and see if it's something that you too would like. If you like yoga, I think you will, although that is not a requirement. It's really not a book about the practice of yoga. It's about life. And I really enjoyed this story, and I really enjoyed his perspective. So I'm very excited to have gotten through that. And then I am still working on Elton John's biography, but I have not gotten very far. It was a very emotionally exhausting week last week, and I'm still kind of letting my nervous system settle from it. So I haven't really been settled enough in the mornings to read this. And I like to read a book in the morning and a book in the evening so that, I kind of keep different flows going in my life. And this is my morning read, and I've just been way too tired and foggy in the mornings to really read very much. But he writes very charmingly, and so far it's very engaging, very personal. He writes like I guess he must talk. It just feels like you're having a chat with him, and he's telling you stories about his life. So I'm looking forward to getting through this, but knowing me, it's probably at least going to take till the end of the year to get through this book. So that's this one. And then I talked in one of my other videos about this book, which has turned out to be quite controversial. I don't know that turned out is the right phrase. It is quite controversial, and probably nobody would be surprised by that given the content. So I would encourage you to read the blurb for yourself and see if it's something that you are interested in. I read the blurb in a previous video, so I won't do it again. I really respect this author, this journalist's work. And I don't know if he considers himself to be a journalist, but I think to do this kind of book, you need to be, at least on some level, certainly a very talented author and storyteller. So I know I will learn a lot about a lot through this book, and I'm looking forward to reading it. So that's going to be my evening read until I finish it. And it's not very long, so I should get through it. Hopefully, I'm try for the end of November on this one. We'll see. I tend to read a little bit more in the evenings than I read in the morning. So That's that. What else did I mention in that video that I just recorded but didn't have very good sound? I don't know. I'm not really sure that it's all that important. Just to say that with each video, I try to learn a little something more. I try to, maybe it doesn't end up to be a better video, but I get a little bit more comfortable with this process. And when I watch them back, I get a little bit more familiar with what it is I want to convey. And mostly what I'm hoping that this channel is about. Do I look a little crooked? I think I might be a little crooked. Anyway, what I'm hoping this channel is connection. I happen to be of the Gen X generation, so hopefully that'll speak to some of you. But, you know, I have had a lot of particularly women in my life who have been 10 to 12 years older than me. In each decade of my life, it seems like there's been one, although there have been more than just, you know, one per decade. But in my 20s, it was older sister of my first boyfriend, and kind of struggling to remember who in my 30s, but definitely a few women, probably mostly the women I worked with. And then in my 40s, it actually was my friend who's now sick. And just along the way, I can think of a lot of women who fit that little, like, you know, a little bit less, a little bit more, right around a decade older than me. And eventually I'll share some of those stories from my past and what it was to be a kid in the 70s, a teenager in the 80s, a young woman in the 90s, a career girl in the 2000s, and how my life has progressed now to being a full-time yoga teacher. All right, my name is Holly. I'm really glad you're here. I'll see you for the next video. If at all what I'm offering resonates, then I hope that not only do you like and comment, but that you subscribe. And I promise to be good about replying to comments, because that's kind of my jam. All right, I'll see you for the next one. Thanks a lot. Thanks for everyone's patience while I learn, and thanks for your feedback. I'll see you for the next one. Bye-bye.